My laser focus is on growing the nation's economy and creating jobs.
If I had had to write down my best guess, it would have been higher. But actually what happened is stronger, I think, than the headline number looks.
Just before the weekend, we got this April jobs report, and it was just egregiously bad. Now, when I say egregiously bad, I mean compared to expectations. We had about 266,000 jobs added to the American economy, and there's a downgrade of the number of jobs that had been expected to grow the prior month as well. It was supposed to be in March, it was supposed to be like 916,000 jobs, and ended up being about 770,000 jobs. In April, it ended up being 266,000 jobs. Now, most economists expected a 1 million job increase. Obviously, expectations wildly missed. According to the Washington Post, the U.S. economy added just 266,000 jobs in April, a disappointing month of growth that fell well below economists' estimates despite declining virus caseloads and increased vaccine distribution around the country. The April unemployment rate remained relatively unchanged at 6.1%, although economists caution the number is misleadingly low given how many people have dropped out of the labor force in the past year. The news increased political pressure in Washington amid concerns about whether a labor shortage reported in some pockets of the economy is slowing down the recovery. The White House rejected that notion on Friday. Instead, they said, no, everything is fine. Right here, for example, was President Biden saying, these job numbers, they show that we're on the right track. Well, except for the fact that this was a completely unexpected slowing. We had, as of just before the pandemic, some 152.5 million people who were employed. We have right now about 144.3 million people who are employed. So we are still 8 million jobs short of where we were. Here's the thing. We have 7.4 million job openings right now, but nobody is filling those job openings. Why? Because when you pay people to stay home, you know what they do? They stay home. Here's Joe Biden pretending that his idiotic economic recovery packages haven't somehow softened the economy.
This month's job numbers show we're on the right track. We still have a long way to go. As I said, my laser focus is on growing the nation's economy and creating jobs.
Well, I mean, his real laser focus is on ensuring that he makes sure that he TiVos Matlock. But aside from that, his laser focus apparently is on pursuing policies that greatly soften the economy. Because here's the thing. What we are currently experiencing is exactly what you would expect if you know anything about economic history. When you blow a bunch of money into an economy that was already in a state of recovery, and when you talk about how you're going to tax everybody who creates jobs out the wazoo, what you end up with is slow economic growth and massive inflation. And indeed, even CNN is picking up on this. According to CNN, over the weekend, everywhere you look, there are headlines about higher prices. Some are tied to commodities, which are getting snapped up as the global economy emerges from its long slumber. Lumber prices are at an all-time high thanks to an epic home-building boom. Copper and steel prices have also reached records. Agricultural products aren't exempt. The price of corn is at its highest level since 2012, same for soybeans. Even sales of block cheese futures have been soaring in anticipation of grilling season. Then there are consumer products. Diaper prices have gone up. Two major producers, Kimberly-Clark and Procter & Gamble, have warned customers that fresh hikes are coming as well. Shortages of computer chips are helping to push up car prices. Soon could do the same for electronics and household appliances. Says CNN, this doesn't just matter for Americans guarding their pocketbooks. Price increases are also being closely scrutinized by investors and economists who are desperate to know, is this a passing phenomenon as the country emerges from a once-in-a-lifetime economic shock or a more sustained trend that evokes the 1970s? Now, normally, it is true that you would end up with higher prices in a time with greater demand and lower supply. But the point is that then demand would be caught up to by supply. Right? As the demand is high and supply is low, you'd be able to ramp up the supply to meet the demand. That's usually how supply and demand curves work. But when you are artificially preventing people from employing anybody, well, then it turns out what you get is hyperinflation. Right? This is when you end up with the money that you have in the bank being worth less than it was yesterday because the products are just more expensive. And this is happening across labor markets. And I was talking yesterday to a small business owner who went out for Mother's Day for brunch for my wife and for my wife's mom. And we went to this restaurant and there was like one waiter and the restaurant was packed. There's one waiter and the owner came out and we were talking to the owner and the owner said, yeah, I had 7 people who were supposed to show up for work this week. And instead they said, no, I'm not going to show up for work because I'm getting paid too much to stay home. I mean, that is a common story that you're hearing from small businesses across the country. You're hearing it over and over. Small business owners are saying openly that the reason that they cannot ramp up supply is because they cannot get people to come into work. There are people who are paying bonuses just to get people to interview for jobs. I was hearing rumors that there are chain restaurants that are now paying people like $50 just to show up for an interview because people are not showing up. When you pay, unemployment benefits have now been extended all the way through September, even though the pandemic is effectively over in many states in the union right now, so far as the economy is concerned. There's a reason that Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida is saying, listen, you need to show actual effort that you're going to try and get a job if you're going to continue to get unemployment benefits. The White House has not been nearly so forthcoming. Right? They're trying to deny all of this. They're trying to pretend that none of this is happening. So Janet Yellen over at the Federal Reserve, who last week admitted that inflation is going to kick in, and then said, well, we can handle it if it does, presumably by getting rid of some of their bond holdings instead of buying bonds in the open market and trying to ramp up the open markets rate, the overnight rate for the feds. Well, I mean, maybe you can do that, or maybe this is going to run out of control because you've created too much of a barrier in the economy to people getting back to work. Here was Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, saying, no, everything's fine.
If I had had to write down a number as my best guess, it would have been higher. But I've watched data for a long time, and I know that it is extremely volatile. There are often surprises and temporary factors, and one should never take 1 month's data as an underlying trend. Besides, remember I said actually what happened is stronger, I think, than the headline number looks.
Okay, in other words, don't believe the numbers. Believe me that it'll be fine. Or maybe it won't, because this jobs report missed by 750,000 jobs. Okay, that is a lot of jobs. A lot of jobs. In a second, we're going to talk about all the various ways the White House is trying to spend this. But again, the reality is that when you spend a bunch of money that nobody needed, and by the way, when Americans were paid to stay home last year, so actually the amount of money that Americans have in the bank right now is actually higher than it was before the pandemic by statistics. So people are ready to spend, but they're not ready to work. And that is a massive gap that is going to have significant downstream effects on the economy, and that is what you are seeing. Did you know that every single like creates one additional leftist tier? That is just science.